Chapter 3. Geralt had reason to suspect, and had long suspected, that sorcerers' banquets differed from the feasts of ordinary mortals. He never suspected, however, that the differences could be so great or so fundamental. The offer of accompanying Yennefer to the banquet preceding the sorcerers' conclave surprised, but did not dumbfound him, since it was not the first such proposal. Previously, when they had lived together and things were good between them, Yennefer had wanted to attend assemblies and conclaves with him at her side. At that time, he steadfastly refused. He was convinced he would be treated by the sorcerers at best as a freak and a spectacle, and at worst as an intruder and a pariah. Yennefer scoffed at his fears, but had never insisted. Since in other situations she was capable of insisting until the house shook and windows shattered, that had confirmed Geralt's belief that his decision had been right. This time he agreed, without a second thought. The offer came after a long, frank, and emotional conversation. After a conversation which had brought them closer again, consigned the old conflicts to the shadows and to oblivion, and melted the ice of resentment, pride, and stubbornness. After their conversation on the causeway in Hirondum, Geralt would have agreed to any, absolutely any, proposition of Yennefer's. He would not even have declined had she suggested they walked into hell to drink a cup of boiling tar with some fiery demons. And on top of it, there was Ciri, without whom neither that conversation nor that meeting could have happened. Ciri, in whom, according to Codringer, some unknown sorcerer had taken an interest. Geralt expected his presence at the convocation to provoke that sorcerer and force his hand, but he didn't tell Yennefer a single word about it. They rode straight from Hirondum to Thanedd, Geralt, Yennefer, Ciri, and Dandelion. First, they stopped at the immense palace complex of Loxia, at the southeastern foot of the mountain. The palace was already teeming with delegates to the conclave and their companions, but accommodation was immediately found for Yennefer. They spent the entire day in Loxia. Geralt whiled away the day talking to Ciri. Dandelion ran around collecting and spreading gossip, and the enchantress measured and chose clothes. When evening finally came, the Witcher and Yennefer joined the colourful procession heading towards Aretuza and the palace, where the banquet was due to take place. And now, in Aretuza, Geralt knew surprise and astonishment, even though he'd vowed to himself he wouldn't be surprised by anything, and nothing would astonish him. The palace's huge central hall had been constructed in the shape of a letter T. The long side had narrow and extremely tall windows reaching almost to the tops of the columns that supported the ceiling. The ceiling was so high, it was difficult to make out the details of the frescoes decorating it, in particular the gender of the naked figures, which were their most common motif. The windows were of stained glass, which must have cost an absolute fortune, but in spite of that, a draught could be felt distinctly in the hall. Geralt was initially surprised the candles didn't go out, but on closer inspection he understood why. The candelabra were magical, and possibly even illusory. In any case, they gave plenty of light, incomparably more than candles would have. When they entered, a good 100 people were already there. The hall, the Witcher estimated, could have held at least 3 times as many, even if the tables had been arranged in a semicircle in the centre, as was customary. But there was no traditional semicircle. It appeared they would be banqueting standing up, doggedly wandering along walls adorned with tapestries, garlands, and pennants, all waving in the draught. Rows of long tables had been arranged under the tapestries and garlands, and the tables were piled high with elaborate dishes served on even more elaborate table settings, among elaborate flower arrangements and extraordinary ice carvings. On closer examination, Geralt noted, there was considerably more elaboration than food. "There's no fair," he stated in a glum voice, smoothing down the short, black, silver-braided, narrow-waisted tunic Yennefer had dressed him in. Tunics like that, the latest fashion, were called doublets. The Witcher had no idea where the name came from, and no desire to find out. Yennefer didn't react. Geralt wasn't expecting her to, knowing well that the enchantress was not generally inclined to react to statements of that kind. But he didn't give up. He continued to complain. He simply felt like moaning. "There's no music. It's drafty as hell. There's nowhere to sit down. Are we going to eat and drink standing up?" The enchantress gave him a meaningful, violet glance. "Indeed," she said, surprisingly calmly. "We shall be eating standing up. You should also know that stopping too long by the food table is considered an indiscretion." "I shall try to behave," he muttered, "particularly since I observe there isn't much to stop by." "Drinking in an unrestrained way is also considered a breach of etiquette," said Yennefer, continuing her instructions and paying absolutely no attention to his grizzling. "Avoiding conversations is considered an inexcusable indiscretion." "And if that beanpole in those ridiculous pantaloons points me out to his 2 girlfriends," he interrupted, "is that considered a faux pas?" "Yes, but a minor one." "What are we going to be doing, Yen?" "Circulating around the hall, greeting people, paying them compliments, engaging in conversation. Stop tugging your doublet and flattening your hair." "You wouldn't let me wear a headband. Your headband's pretentious." "Well then, take my arm and let's go. Standing near the entrance is considered a faux pas." They wandered through the hall, which was gradually filling up with guests. Geralt was ravenously hungry, but quickly realized Yennefer hadn't been joking. It became clear that the etiquette observed by mages did indeed demand that one eat and drink very little, and do it with a nonchalant air. To cap it all, every stop at the food table carried with it social obligations. Someone would notice you, express their joy at the fact, and then approach and offer their greetings, which were as effusive as they were disingenuous. After the compulsory air kisses or unpleasantly weak handshakes, after the insincere smiles and even less sincere, although well-concocted compliments, followed a brief and tediously banal conversation about nothing. The Witcher looked around eagerly, searching for familiar faces, mainly in the hope he wasn't the only person present who didn't belong to this magical fraternity. Yennefer had assured him he wouldn't be, but in spite of that, he couldn't see anyone who wasn't a member of the Brotherhood, or at least he was unable to recognize anyone. Page boys carrying trays weaved among the guests, serving wine. Yennefer didn't drink at all. The Witcher wanted to get tight, but couldn't. Instead, he found his doublet was under the arms. Skillfully steering Geralt with her arm, the enchantress pulled him away from the table and led him into the middle of the hall, to the very centre of general interest. His resistance counted for nothing. He realized what this was all about. It was quite simply a display. Geralt knew what to expect. So, with stoical calm, he endured the glances of the enchantresses, brimming with insalubrious curiosity, and the enigmatic smirks of the sorcerers. Although Yennefer assured him that propriety and tact forbade the use of magic at this kind of event, he didn't believe the mages were capable of restraining themselves, particularly since Yennefer was provocatively thrusting him into the limelight. And he was right not to believe. He felt his medallion vibrating several times, and the pricking of magical impulses. Some sorcerers, or more precisely some enchantresses, brazenly tried to read his thoughts. He was prepared for that, knew what was happening, and knew how to respond. He looked at Yennefer walking alongside him, at white and black and diamond Yennefer with her raven hair and violet eyes, and the sorcerers trying to sound him out became unsettled and disorientated. Confronted with his blissful satisfaction, they were clearly losing their composure and poise. "Yes," he answered in his thoughts, "you're not mistaken. There is only she, Yennefer, at my side, here and now, and only she matters, here and now. And what she was long ago, where she was long ago, and who she was with long ago, doesn't have the slightest importance. Now she's with me, here, among you all. With me, with no one else. That's what I'm thinking right now, thinking only about her, thinking endlessly about her, smelling the scent of her perfume and the warmth of her body, and you can all choke on your envy." The enchantress squeezed his forearm firmly and moved closer to his side. "Thank you," she murmured, guiding him towards the tables once again, "but without such excessive ostentation, if you don't mind." "Do you mages always take sincerity for ostentation? Is that why you don't believe in sincerity, even when you read it in someone's mind?" "Yes, that is why." "But you still thank me." "Because I believe you," she said, squeezing his arm even tighter and picking up a plate. "Give me a little salmon, Witcher, and some crab." "These crabs are from Porvis. They were probably caught a month ago, and it's really hot right now. Aren't you worried?" "These crabs," she interrupted, "were still creeping along the seabed this morning. Teleportation is a wonderful invention. Indeed, he concurred. It ought to be made more widely available, don't you think? We're working on it. Come on, give me some, I'm hungry. I love you, Yen. I said drop the ostentation. She broke off, tossed her head, drew some black curls away from her cheek, and opened her violet eyes wide. Geralt, it's the first time you've ever said that. It can't be. You're making fun of me. No. No, I'm not. You used only to think it. But today you said it. Is there such a difference? A huge one. Yen, don't talk with your mouth full. I love you too. Haven't I ever told you? Heavens, you'll choke. Lift your arms up and I'll thump you in the back. Take some deep breaths. Yen, keep breathing, it'll soon pass. Yen! Yes, I'm repaying sincerity with sincerity. Are you feeling all right? I was waiting, she said, squeezing lemon on the salmon. It wouldn't have been proper to react to a declaration made as a thought. I was waiting for the words. I was able to reply, so I replied. I feel wonderful. What's up? I'll tell you later. Eat. This salmon is delicious. I swear on the power, absolutely delicious. May I kiss you? Right now, here, in front of everyone. No. Yennefer. A dark-haired sorceress passing alongside freed her arm from the crook of her companion's elbow and came closer. So you made it. Oh, how divine. I haven't seen you for ages. Sabrina, said Yennefer, displaying such genuine joy that anyone apart from Geralt might have been deceived. Darling, how wonderful. The enchantresses embraced gingerly and kissed each other beside their ears and their diamond and onyx earrings. The two enchantresses' earrings, resembling miniature bunches of grapes, were identical, but the whiff of fierce hostility immediately floated in the air. Geralt, if I may, this is a school friend of mine, Sabrina Glefisig, of Ardcara. The Witcher bowed and kissed the raised hand. He had already observed that all enchantresses expected to be greeted by being kissed on the hand, a gesture which awarded them the same status as princesses, to put it mildly. Sabrina Glefisig raised her head, her earrings shaking and jingling, gently but ostentatiously and impudently. I've been so looking forward to meeting you, Geralt, she said with a smile. Like all enchantresses, she didn't recognize any sirs, your excellencies, or other forms of address used among the nobility. You can't believe how delighted I am. You finally stopped hiding him from us, Yenna. Speaking frankly, I'm amazed you put it off for so long. You have absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. I agree, replied Yennefer nonchalantly, narrowing her eyes a little and ostentatiously tossing her hair back from her own earrings. Gorgeous blouse, Sabrina. Simply stunning, isn't it, Geralt? The Witcher nodded and swallowed. Sabrina Glevisig's blouse, made of black chiffon, revealed absolutely everything there was to reveal, and there was plenty of it. Her crimson skirt, gathered in by a silver belt with a large rose-shaped buckle, was split up the side, in keeping with the latest fashion. Fashion demanded it be split halfway up the thigh, but Sabrina wore hers split to halfway up her hip, and a very nice hip at that. What's new in Kaedwen? Said Yennefer, pretending not to see what Geralt was looking at. Is your King Henselt still wasting energy and resources chasing the squirrels through the forests? Is he still thinking about a punitive expedition against the elves from Dol Blatana? Let's give politics a rest, smiled Sabrina. Her slightly too long nose and predatory eyes made her resemble the classic image of a witch. Tomorrow at the council we'll be politicking until it comes out of our ears, and we'll hear plenty of moralizing too, about the need for peaceful coexistence, about friendship, about the necessity to adopt a loyal position regarding the plans and ambitions of our kings. What else shall we hear, Yennefer? What else are the chapter and Vilgefortz preparing for us? Let's give politics a rest. Sabrina Glevisig gave a silvery laugh, echoed by the gentle jingling of her earrings. Indeed. Let's wait until tomorrow. Tomorrow? Everything will come clear tomorrow. Oh, politics, and those endless debates. What an awful effect they have on the complexion. Fortunately, I have an excellent cream. Believe me, darling, wrinkles disappear like morning mist. Shall I give you the formula?
Thank you, darling, but I don't need it, truly. Oh, I know. I always envied your complexion at school. How many years is it now? By the gods.
Yennefer pretended she was returning a greeting to someone passing alongside, while Sabrina smiled at the Witcher and joyously thrust out everything the black chiffon wasn't hiding. Geralt swallowed again, trying not to look too blatantly at her pink nipples, only too visible beneath the transparent material. He glanced timidly at Yennefer. The enchantress smiled, but he knew her too well. She was incandescent.
"Oh, forgive me," said Yennefer suddenly. "I can see Philippa over there. I just have to talk to her. Come with me, Geralt. Bye-bye, Sabrina." "Bye, Yenna," said Sabrina Glevisig, looking the Witcher in the eyes. "Congratulations again on your taste." "Thank you," said Yennefer, her voice suspiciously cold. "Thank you, darling." Philippa Eilhart was accompanied by Dijkstra. Geralt, who'd once had a fleeting contact with the Redanian spy, ought in principle to have been pleased. He'd finally met someone he knew who, like he, didn't belong to the fraternity. Yet he wasn't glad at all. "How lovely to see you, Yenna," said Philippa, giving Yennefer an air kiss. "Greetings, Geralt. You both know Count Dijkstra, don't you?" "Who doesn't?" said Yennefer, bowing her head and proffering her hand to Dijkstra. The spy kissed it with reverence. "I'm delighted to see you again, Your Excellency."
"It's a joy for me to see you again, Yennefer," replied the chief of King Visimir's secret service, "particularly in such agreeable company. Geralt, my respects come from the bottom of my heart."
Geralt, refraining from telling Dijkstra his respect came from the heart of his bottom, shook the proffered hand, or rather tried to. Its dimensions exceeded the norm, which made shaking it practically impossible. The gigantic spy was dressed in a light beige doublet, unbuttoned informally. He clearly felt at ease in it.
"I noticed," said Philippa, "you talking to Sabrina."
"That's right," snorted Yennefer. "Have you seen what she's wearing? You'd either have to have no taste or no shame to... She's bloody older than me by at least... Never mind. And as if she still had anything to show, the revolting cow."
"Did she try to question you? Everyone knows she spies for Henselt of Kaidwen."
"You don't say," said Yennefer, faking astonishment, which was rightly considered an excellent joke.
"And you, Your Excellency, are you enjoying our celebration?" asked Yennefer, after Philippa and Dijkstra had stopped laughing.
"Extraordinarily,"
said King Visimir's spy, giving a courtly bow.
"If we presume," said Philippa, smiling, "that the Count is here on business, such an assurance is extremely complimentary, and, like every similar compliment, not very sincere. Only a moment ago he confessed he'd prefer a nice murky atmosphere, the stink of flaming brands and scorched meat on a spit. He also misses a traditional table swimming in spilt sauce and beer, which he could bang with his beer mug to the rhythm of a few filthy, drunken songs, and which he could gracefully slide under in the early hours, to fall asleep among hounds gnawing bones. And just imagine, he remains deaf to my arguments extolling the superiority of our way of banqueting."
"Indeed," said the Witcher, looking at the spy more benignly. "And what were those arguments, if I might ask?" This time his question was clearly treated as an excellent joke, because both enchantresses began laughing at the same time.
"Oh, you men," said Philippa, "you don't understand anything. How can you show off your dress or your figure if you're hiding behind a table in the gloom and smoke?"
Geralt, unable to find the words, merely bowed. Yennefer squeezed his arm gently.
"Oh," she said, "I see Triss Merigold over there. I just have to exchange a few words with her. Excuse me for abandoning you. Take care, Philippa. We will certainly find an opportunity for a chat today, won't we, Your Excellency?"
"Undoubtedly," said Dijkstra, smiling and bowing low. "At your service, Yennefer. Your wish is my command."
They went over to Triss, who was shimmering in shades of blue and pale green. On seeing them, Triss broke off her conversation with two sorcerers, smiled radiantly, and hugged Yennefer. The ritual of kissing the air near each other's ears was repeated. Geralt took the proffered hand, but decided to act contrary to the rules of etiquette. He embraced the chestnut-haired enchantress and kissed her on her soft cheek, as downy as a peach. Triss blushed faintly. The sorcerers introduced themselves. One of them was Drythelm of Pontvanis, the other his brother, Detmold. They were both in the service of King Esterad of Kovir. Both proved to be taciturn, and both moved away at the first opportunity that presented itself.
You were talking to Philippa and Dijkstra of Traitorgore, observed Triss, playing with a lapis lazuli heart set in silver and diamonds, which hung from around her neck. You know who Dijkstra is, of course. Yes, we do, said Yennefer. Did he talk to you? Did he try to get anything out of you? He tried, said the enchantress, smiling knowingly and giggling, quite subtly. But Philippa was doing a good job throwing him off his stride, and I thought they were on better terms. They're on excellent terms, Yennefer warned her gravely. Be careful, Triss. Don't breathe a word to him about you-know-who. I know. I'll be careful. And by the way, Triss lowered her voice. How's she doing? Will I be able to see her? If you finally decide to run classes at Aretusa, smiled Yennefer, you'll be able to see her very often. Ah, said Triss, opening her eyes widely. I see. Is Ciri— Be quiet, Triss. We'll talk about it later. Tomorrow, after the council. Tomorrow, said Triss, smiling strangely. Yennefer frowned, but before she had time to ask a question, a slight commotion suddenly broke out in the hall. They're here, said Triss, clearing her throat. They've finally arrived. Yes, confirmed Yennefer, tearing her gaze from her friend's eyes. They're here. Geralt, at last you'll have a chance to meet the members of the chapter and the High Council. If the opportunity presents itself, I'll introduce you, but it won't hurt if you know who's who beforehand. The assembled sorcerers parted, bowing with respect at the personages entering the hall. The first was a middle-aged but vigorous man in extremely modest woolen clothing. At his side strode a tall, sharp-featured woman with dark, smoothly combed hair. That is Geralt of Aile, also known as Hen Gedjimdaith, the oldest living sorcerer, Yennefer informed Geralt in hushed tones. The woman walking beside him is Desire de Vries. She isn't much younger than Hen, but is not afraid of using elixirs to hide it. Behind the couple walked an attractive woman with very long, dark golden hair and a grey-green dress decorated with lace, which rustled as she moved. Francesca Finderbauer, also called Enid Angleana, the Daisy of the Valleys. Don't goggle, Witcher. She is widely considered to be the most beautiful woman in the world. Is she a member of the chapter? He whispered in astonishment. She looks very young. Is that also thanks to magical elixirs? Not in her case. Francesca is a pure-blooded elf. Observe the man escorting her. He's Vilgefortz of Roggeveen, and he really is young, but incredibly talented. In the case of sorcerers, as Geralt knew, the term young covered any age up to and including 100 years. Vilgefortz looked 35. He was tall and well-built, wore a short jerkin of a knightly cut, but without a coat of arms, naturally. He was also fiendishly handsome. It made a great impression, even considering that Francesca Finderbauer was flowing gracefully along at his side with her huge doe eyes and breathless beauty. That short man walking alongside Vilgefortz is Arto Terranova, explained Triss Merigold. Those 5 constitute the chapter. And that girl, with a strange face, walking behind Vilgefortz. That's his assistant, Lydia van Bredevoort, said Yennefer coldly. A meaningless individual, but looking her directly in the face is considered a serious faux pas. Take note of those 3 men bringing up the rear. They're all members of the council. Faircart of Sidaris, Radcliffe of Oxenford, and Carduin of Lanexeter. Is that the whole council, in its entirety? I thought there were more of them. The chapter numbers 5, and there are another 5 in the council. Philippa Eilhart is another council member. The numbers still don't add up, he said, shaking his head. Triss giggled. Haven't you told him? Do you really not know, Geralt? No, what exactly? That Yennefer's also a member of the council, ever since the Battle of Sodden. Haven't you boasted about it to him yet, darling? No, darling, said the enchantress, looking her friend straight in the eyes. For one thing, I don't like to boast. For another, there's been no time. I haven't seen Geralt for ages, and we have a lot of catching up to do. There's already a long list. We're going through it point by point. I see, said Triss hesitantly. After such a long time, I understand. You must have lots to talk about. Talking, smiled Yennefer suggestively, giving the Witcher another smouldering glance, is way down the list. Right at the very bottom, Triss. The chestnut-haired enchantress was clearly discomfited and blushed faintly. I see, she said, playing in embarrassment with her lapis lazuli heart. I'm so glad you do. Geralt, bring us some wine. No, not from that page. From that other one, over there.
He complied, sensing at once a note of compulsion in her voice. As he took the goblets from the tray the page was carrying, he discreetly observed the two enchantresses. Yennefer was speaking quickly and quietly, while Triss Merigold was listening intently, with her head down. When he returned, Triss had gone. Yennefer didn't show any interest in the wine, so he placed the two unwanted goblets on a table.
"Sure you didn't go a bit too far?" he asked coldly.
Yennefer's eyes flared violet.
Don't try to make a fool out of me. Did you think I don't know about you and her?
If that's what you—
That's precisely what, she said, cutting him off. Don't make stupid faces, and refrain from comments. And above all, don't try to lie to me. I've known Triss longer than I've known you. We like each other. We understand each other wonderfully, and will always do so, irrespective of various minor incidents. Just then it seemed to me she had some doubts, so I put her right, and that's that. Let's not discuss it any further.
He didn't intend to. Yennefer pulled her curls back from her cheek.
Now I shall leave you for a moment. I must talk to Desire and Francesca. Have some more food, because your stomach's rumbling, and be vigilant. Several people are sure to accost you. Don't let them walk all over you, and don't tarnish my reputation.
You can be sure of that.
Geralt?
Yes?
A short while ago you expressed a desire to kiss me, here, in front of everyone. Do you still hold to that?
I do.
Just try not to smudge my lipstick.
He glanced at the assembly out of the corner of his eye. They were watching the kiss, but not intrusively. Philippa Eilhart, standing nearby with a group of young sorcerers, winked at him and feigned applause. Yennefer pulled her mouth away from his and heaved a deep sigh.
A trifling thing, but pleasing, she purred.
All right, I'm going.
I'll be right back. And later, after the banquet,
I beg your pardon?
Please don't eat anything containing garlic.
After she had gone, the Witcher abandoned convention, unfastened his doublet, drank both goblets of wine, and tried to get down to some serious eating. Nothing came of it.
Geralt. Your Excellency. Lay off the titles, frowned Dijkstra. I'm no count. Vissemir ordered me to introduce myself like that, so as not to affront courtiers or sorcerers with my peasant origins. So, how's it going impressing people with your outfit and your figure, and pretending to have fun? I don't have to pretend. I'm not here in a professional capacity. That's interesting, smiled the spy, but confirms the general opinion that says you're special, one of a kind, because everyone else is here in a professional capacity. That's what I was afraid of, said Geralt, also deeming it appropriate to smile. I guessed I'd be one of a kind, meaning out of place.
The spy inspected the nearby dishes, and then picked up and devoured the large green pod of a vegetable unfamiliar to Geralt.
By the way, he said, thank you for the Michelet brothers. Plenty of people in Redania sighed with relief when you hacked the four of them to death in the port in Oxenford. I laughed out loud when the university physician who was summoned to the investigation concluded, after examining the wounds, that someone had used a scythe blade mounted upright.
Geralt didn't comment. Dijkstra put another pod into his mouth.
It's a pity, he continued, chewing, that after dispatching them, you didn't report to the mayor. There was a bounty on them, dead or alive, a considerable one.
Too many problems with my tax return already, said the Witcher, also deciding to sample a green pod, which turned out to taste like soapy celery. Besides, I had to get away quickly because— But I'm probably boring you, Dijkstra. You know everything, after all.
Not a bit of it, smiled the spy. I really don't. Where would I learn such things from, anyway?
From the reports of, I don't know, Philippa Eilhart?
Reports, tales, rumours, I have to listen to them. It's my job. But, at the same time, my job forces me to sift every detail through a very fine sieve. Recently, just imagine, I heard that someone hacked the infamous Professor and his two comrades to death. It happened outside an inn in Anchor. The person who did it was also in too much of a hurry to collect the bounty.
Geralt shrugged.
Rumours. Sift them through a fine sieve and you'll see what remains. I don't have to. I know what will remain. Most often it's a deliberate attempt at disinformation. And while we're on the subject of disinformation, how is little Cyrilla doing? Poor sickly little girl, so prone to diphtheria. She's healthy, I trust.
Drop it, Dijkstra, replied the Witcher coldly, looking the spy straight in the eye. I know you're here in a professional capacity, but don't be overzealous. The spy chortled, and 2 passing sorceresses looked at him in astonishment, and with interest.
King Vizimir, said Dijkstra, his chuckle over, pays me an extra bonus for every mystery I solve. My zealousness guarantees me a decent living. You can laugh, but I have a wife and children.
I don't see anything funny about it. Work to support your wife and children, but not at my expense, if you don't mind. It seems to me there's no shortage of mysteries and riddles in this hall.
Quite. The whole of Aretusa is one great riddle. You must have noticed. Something's in the air, Geralt, and for the sake of clarity, I don't mean the candelabra.
I don't get it.
I believe you, because I don't get it either, and I'd like very much to. Wouldn't you? Oh, I beg your pardon, because you're sure to know it all, too. From the reports of, I don't know, the enchanting Yennefer of Vengerberg. But just think, there were times when I would pick up scraps of information from the enchanting Yennefer, too. Where are the snows of yesteryear?
I really don't know what you mean, Dijkstra. Could you express your thoughts more lucidly? Do your best. On condition you're not doing it out of professional considerations. Forgive me, but I have no intention of earning you an extra bonus.
Think I'm trying to trick you dishonourably? Scowled the spy. To get information out of you using deceit. You're being unfair, Geralt. It simply interests me whether you see the same patterns in this hall that are so obvious to me.
So, what's so obvious to you?
Doesn't the total absence of crowned heads, which is blatantly apparent at this gathering, surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me in the least, said Geralt, finally managing to stab a marinated olive with a toothpick. I'm sure kings prefer traditional banquets, seated at a table, which one can gracefully slide beneath in the early hours. And what's more, what is more? Asked Dijkstra, putting 4 olives, which he had unceremoniously extracted from the bowl with his fingers, into his mouth. What is more, said the Witcher, looking at the small crowd passing through the hall. The kings didn't bother to make the effort. They sent an army of spies in their stead, both members of the fraternity and not, probably in order to find out what's really in the air here. Dijkstra spat the olive stones out onto the table, took a long fork from the silver tray, and used it to rummage around in a deep crystal bowl.
And Vilgefortz, he said, continuing to rummage, made sure no spy was absent. He has all the royal spies in one pot. Why would Vilgefortz want all the royal spies in one pot, Witcher?
I have no idea, and it interests me little. I told you, I'm here as a private individual. I'm, how shall I put it, outside the pot. King Vizimir's spy fished a small octopus out of the bowl and examined it in disgust.
People eat these,
he said, shaking his head in fake sympathy, and then turning towards Geralt.
Listen to me carefully, Witcher, he said quietly. Your convictions about privacy, your certainty that you don't care about anything and that you couldn't possibly care about anything, they perturb me, and that inclines me to take a gamble. Do you like a flutter?
Be precise, please.
I suggest a wager, said Dijkstra, raising the fork with the octopus impaled on it. I venture that in the course of the next hour, Vilgefortz will ask you to join him in a long conversation. I venture that during this conversation he will prove to you that you aren't here as a private individual, and you are in his pot. Should I be wrong, I'll eat this shit in front of you, tentacles and all. Do you accept the wager?
What will I have to eat, should I lose?
Nothing, said Dijkstra, and quickly looked around. But should you lose, you'll report the entire content of your conversation with Vilgefortz to me.
The Witcher was silent for a while, and looked calmly at the spy. Farewell, Your Excellency, he said at last. "Thank you for the chat. It was educational." Dykstra was somewhat annoyed.
"Would you say so?"
"Yes, I would," interrupted Geralt. "Farewell." The spy shrugged his shoulders, threw the octopus and fork into the bowl, turned on his heel and walked away. Geralt didn't watch him go. He slowly moved to the next table, led by the desire to get his hands on some of the huge pink and white prawns piled up on a silver platter among lettuce leaves and quarters of lime. He had an appetite for them, but, still feeling curious eyes on him, wanted to consume the crustaceans in a dignified manner, without losing face. He approached extravagantly slowly, picking at delicacies from the other dishes cautiously and with dignity. Sabrina Glevisig stood at the next table, deep in conversation with a flame-haired enchantress he didn't know. The redhead wore a white skirt and a blouse of white georgette. The blouse, like that of Sabrina's, was totally transparent, but had several strategically placed appliques and embroideries. The appliques, noticed Geralt, had an interesting quality. They became opaque and then transparent by turns. The enchantresses were talking, sustaining themselves with slices of langoust. They were conversing quietly in the elder speech, and although they weren't looking at him, they were clearly talking about him. He discreetly focused his sensitive Witcher hearing, pretending to be utterly absorbed by the prawns. "With Yennefer?" inquired the redhead, playing with a pearl necklace coiled around her neck like a dog's collar. "Are you serious, Sabrina?"
"Absolutely,"
answered Sabrina Glevisig.
"You won't believe it, but it's been going on for several years, and I'm surprised indeed he can stand that vile toad."
"Why be surprised? She's put a spell on him. She has him under a charm. Think I've never done that."
"But he's a witcher. They can't be bewitched, not for long at any rate."
"It must be love, then," sighed the redhead, "and love is blind."
"He's blind, more like," said Sabrina, grimacing. "Would you believe, Marty, that you dare to introduce me to him as an old school friend? Bloody hell, she's older than me by— Oh, never mind. I tell you, she's hellishly jealous about that Witcher. Little Marigold only smiled at him, and that hag bawled her out and sent her packing in no uncertain terms. And right now, take a look. She's standing there, talking to Francesca without ever taking her eyes off her Witcher."
"She's afraid," giggled the redhead, "that we'll have our way with him, even if only for tonight. Are you up for it, Sabrina? Shall we try? He's a fit lad, and not like those conceited weaklings of ours with all their complexes and pretensions."
"Don't talk so loud, Marty," hissed Sabrina. "Don't look at him and don't grin. Yennefer's watching us too. And stay classy. Do you really want to seduce him? That would be in bad taste."
You're right," agreed Marty after a moment's thought. "But what if he suddenly came over and suggested it himself?"
"In that case," said Sabrina Glevisig, glancing at the Witcher with a predatory coal-black eye, "I'd give it to him without a second thought, even lying on a rock."
"I'd even do it lying on a hedgehog," sniggered Marty.
The Witcher, staring at the tablecloth, hid his foolish expression behind a prawn and a lettuce leaf, extremely pleased to have the mutation of his blood vessels which prevented him from blushing. "Witcher Geralt?" He swallowed the prawn and turned around. A sorcerer who looked familiar smiled faintly, touching the embroidered facings of his purple doublet.
"Doragere Vol. But we are acquainted. We met— I remember. Excuse me, I didn't recognize you right away. Glad to—"
The sorcerer smiled a little more broadly, taking 2 goblets from a tray being carried by a page boy. "I've been watching you for some time," he said, handing one of the glasses to Geralt. "You've told everyone Yennefer has introduced you to that you're enjoying yourself. Is that duplicity or a lack of criticism?"
"Courtesy."
"Towards them," said Doragere, indicating the banqueters with a sweeping gesture. "Believe me, it's not worth the effort. They're a vain, envious, and mendacious bunch. They don't appreciate your courtesy. Why, they treat it as sarcasm. With them, Witcher, you have to use their own methods. Be obsessive, arrogant, and rude, and then at least you'll impress them. Will you drink a glass of wine with me?"
"The gnat's piss they serve here," smiled Geralt pleasantly. "With the greatest revulsion. Well, but if you like it, then I'll force myself."
Sabrina and Marty, listening intently from their table, snorted noisily. Doragere sized them both up with a contemptuous glance, turned, clinked his goblet against the Witcher's, and smiled, this time genuinely. "A point to you?" he admitted freely. "You learn quickly. Where the hell did you acquire that wit, Witcher? On the road you insist on roaming around, hunting endangered species? Your good health. You may laugh, but you're one of the few people in this hall I feel like proposing such a toast to." "Indeed," said Geralt, delicately slurping the wine and savouring the taste, "in spite of the fact I make my living slaughtering endangered species." "Don't try to trip me up," said the sorcerer, slapping him on the back. "The banquet has only just begun. A few more people are sure to accost you, so ration out your scathing riposts more sparingly. But as far as your profession is concerned, you, Geralt, at least have enough dignity not to deck yourself out with trophies. But take a good look around. Go on, forget convention for a moment. They like people to stare at them." The Witcher obediently fixed his gaze on Sabrina Glevisig's breasts. "Look," said Dorigaray, seizing him by the sleeve and pointing at a sorceress walking past, tulle fluttering. "Slippers made from the skin of the horned agama. Had you noticed?" He nodded ingenuously, since he'd only noticed what her transparent tulle blouse wasn't covering. "Oh, if you please, rock cobra," said the sorcerer, unerringly spotting another pair of slippers being paraded around the hall. The fashion, which had shortened hemlines to a span above the ankle, made his task easier. "And over there, white iguana, salamander, wyvern, spectacled caiman, basilisk. Every one of those reptiles is an endangered species. Can't people bloody wear shoes of calfskin or pigskin?"
"Going on about leather, as usual, Dorigaray?" asked Philippa Eilhart, stopping beside them. "And tanning and shoemaking? What vulgar, tasteless subjects."
"People find a variety of things tasteless," said the sorcerer, grimacing contemptuously. "Your dress has a beautiful trim, Philippa. Diamond ermine, if I'm not mistaken. Very tasteful. I'm sure you're aware this species was exterminated 20 years ago owing to its beautiful pelt."
30,
corrected Philippa, stuffing the last of the prawns, which Geralt hadn't been quick enough to eat, into her mouth, one after the other.
I know. The species would surely have come back to life had I instructed my dressmaker to trim my dress with bunches of raw flax. I considered it, but the colours wouldn't have matched."
"Let's go to that table over there," suggested the Witcher easily. "I saw a large bowl of black caviar there, and since the shovel-nosed sturgeon has almost totally died out, we ought to hurry."
"Eating caviar in your company? I've dreamed about that,"
said Philippa, fluttering her eyelashes and smelling enticingly of cinnamon and muskroot as she slipped her arm into his.
"Let's not hang around. Will you join us, Dorigaray? You won't? Well, see you later, and enjoy yourself."
The sorcerer snapped his fingers and turned away. Sabrina Glevisig and her red-headed friend watched them walk away with looks more venomous than the endangered rock cobras.
"Dorigaray,"
murmured Philippa, unashamedly snuggling up to Geralt,
"spies for King Ethane of Sidaris. Be on your guard. That reptiles and skin talk of his is the prelude to being interrogated."
And Sabrina Glevisig was listening closely. "Because she spies for Henselt of Tidewin," he finished. "I know, you mentioned it. And that redhead, her friend,
she's no redhead. It's dyed. Haven't you got eyes? That's Marty Södergren."
"Who does she spy for?"
"Marty?"
Philippa laughed, her teeth flashing behind her vividly painted lips.
"Not for anyone. Marty isn't interested in politics."
"Outrageous. I thought everyone here was a spy."
"Many of them are," said the enchantress, narrowing her eyes. "But not everyone. Not Marty Södergren. Marty is a healer and a nymphomaniac. Oh, damn, look. They've scoffed all the caviar, down to the last egg. They've licked the plate clean. What are we going to do now?"
"Now," smiled Geralt innocently, "you'll announce that something's in the air. You'll say I have to reject neutrality and make a choice. You'll suggest a wager. I daren't even imagine what the prize might be, but I know I'll have to do something for you should I lose." Philippa Eilhart was quiet for a long time, her eyes fixed on his.
"I should have guessed," she said quietly. "Dykstra couldn't restrain himself, could he? He made you an offer, and I warned him you detest spies."
"I don't detest spies. I detest spying, and I detest contempt. Don't propose any wagers to me, Philippa. Of course I can sense something in the air, and it can hang there for all I care. It doesn't affect or interest me."
"You already told me that, in Oxenfurt."
"I'm glad you haven't forgotten. You also recall the circumstances, I trust.
Very clearly. But then I didn't reveal to you who Ryance, or whatever his name is, was working for. I let him get away. Oh, you were so angry with me,
to put it mildly.
Then the time has come for me to be exonerated. I'll give you Ryance tomorrow. Don't interrupt and don't make faces. This isn't a wager à la Dijkstra. It's a promise, and I keep my promises. No questions, please. Wait until tomorrow. Now, let's concentrate on caviar and trivial gossip.
There is no caviar.
One moment.
She looked around quickly, waved a hand and mumbled a spell. The silver dish in the shape of a leaping fish immediately filled with the roe of the endangered shovel-nosed sturgeon. The Witcher smiled. Can one eat one's fill of an illusion?
No, but snobbish tastes can be pleasantly titillated by it. Have a try.
Indeed. I'd say it's tastier than the real thing.
And it's not at all fattening, said the enchantress proudly, squeezing lemon juice over a heaped teaspoon of caviar. May I have another goblet of white wine?
At your service.
Philippa? Yes?
I'm told etiquette precludes the use of spells here. Wouldn't it be safer, then, to conjure up the illusion of the taste of caviar alone, without the caviar? Just the sensation. You'd surely be able to.
Of course I would, said Philippa Eilhart, looking at him through her crystal goblet. The construction of such a spell is easy as pie. But were you only to have the sensation of taste, you'd lose the pleasure the activity offers. The process, the accompanying ritual movements, the gestures, the conversation and eye contact which accompanies the process. I'll entertain you with a witty comparison. Would you like that?
Please do. I'm looking forward to it.
I'd also be capable of conjuring the sensation of an orgasm.
Before the Witcher had regained the power of speech, a short, slim sorceress with long, straight, straw-coloured hair came over to him. He recognized her at once. She was the one in the horned agama-skin slippers and the green tulle top, which didn't even cover a minor detail like the small mole above her left breast.
I'm sorry, she said, but I have to interrupt your little flirting session, Philippa. Radcliffe and Detmold would like to talk to you for a moment. It's urgent. Well, it's like that. I'm coming. Bye, Geralt. We'll continue our flirting later. Ah, said the blonde, sizing him up. Geralt the Witcher, the man Yennefer lost her head over. I've been watching you and wondering who you might be. It was tormenting me terribly.
I know that kind of torment, he replied, smiling politely. I'm experiencing it right now.
Do excuse the gaffe. I'm Kira Metz. Oh, caviar.
Be careful. It's an illusion.
Bloody hell, you're right, said the sorceress, dropping the spoon as though it was the tail of a black scorpion. Who was so barefaced? You. Can you create fourth-level illusions?
He lied, continuing to smile. I'm a master of magic. I'm pretending to be a witcher to remain incognito. Do you think Yennefer would bother with an ordinary witcher?
Kira Metz looked him straight in the eyes and scowled. She was wearing a medallion in the form of an Ankh cross, silver and set with zircon.
A drop of wine? He suggested, trying to break the awkward silence. He was afraid his joke hadn't been well received.
No, thank you, oh fellow master, said Kira icily. I don't drink. I can't. I plan to get pregnant tonight. By whom?
Asked the fake red-headed friend of Sabrina Glevisig, who was dressed in a transparent white georgette blouse decorated with cleverly positioned details, walking over to them.
By whom?
She repeated, innocently fluttering her long eyelashes.
Kira turned and gave her an up-and-down glare from her white iguana slippers to her pearl-encrusted tiara. What business is it of yours? It isn't. Professional curiosity. Won't you introduce me to your companion, the famous Geralt of Rivia? With great reluctance. But I know I won't be able to fob you off. Geralt, this is Marty Serdegren, seductress. Her speciality is aphrodisiacs. Must we talk shop? Oh, have you left me a little caviar? How kind of you. Careful, chorused Kira and the Witcher.
It's an illusion.
So it is, said Marty Serdegren, leaning over and wrinkling her nose, after which she picked up a goblet and looked at the traces of crimson lipstick on it. Ah, Philippa Eilhart, I should have known. Who else would have dared to do something so brazen? That revolting snake. Did you know she spies for Visimir of Redania?
And is an nymphomaniac, risked the Witcher. Marty and Kira snorted in unison.
Is that what you were counting on? Fawning over her and flirting with her? asked the seductress. If so, you ought to know someone's played a mean trick on you. Philippa lost her taste for men some time ago. But perhaps you're really a woman? Asked Kira Metz, pouting her glistening lips. Perhaps you're only pretending to be a man, my fellow master of magic, to remain incognito. Do you know, Marty, he confessed a moment ago that he likes to pretend. He likes to, and knows how to, smiled Marty spitefully. Right, Geralt? A while back, I saw you pretending to be hard of hearing and unable to understand the elder speech. He has endless vices, said Yennefer coldly, walking over and imperiously linking arms with the Witcher. He has practically nothing but vices. You're wasting your time, ladies. So it would seem, agreed Marty Surdegren, still smiling spitefully. Here's hoping you enjoy the party, then. Come on, Kira, let's have a goblet of something. Alcohol-free. Perhaps I'll also decide to have a try tonight.
Phew, he exclaimed, once they'd gone. Right on time, Yen. Thank you.
You're thanking me? Not sincerely, I should imagine. There are precisely 11 women in this hall, flashing their tits through transparent blouses. I leave you for just half an hour, and I catch you talking to 2 of them. Yennefer broke off and looked at the fish-shaped dish. And eating illusions, she finished. Oh, Geralt, Geralt. Come with me. I can introduce you to several people who are worth knowing.
Would one of them be Vilgefortz?
Interesting, said the enchantress, squinting, that you should ask about him. Yes, Vilgefortz would like to meet you and talk to you. I warn you that the conversation may appear banal and frivolous, but don't let that deceive you. Vilgefortz is an expert, exceptionally intelligent old hand. I don't know what he wants from you, but stay vigilant.
I will, he sighed, but I can't imagine your wily old fox is capable of surprising me. Not after what I've been through here. I've been mauled by spies and jumped by endangered reptiles and ermines. I've been fed non-existent caviar. Nymphomaniacs with no interest in men have questioned my manhood. I've been threatened with rape on a hedgehog, menaced by the prospect of pregnancy and even of an orgasm, but one without any of the ritual movements.
Have you been drinking?
A little white wine from Sidaris, but there was probably an aphrodisiac in it.
Yen, are we going back to Loxier after the conversation with Vilgefortz? No, we aren't.
I beg your pardon?
I want to spend the night in Aretusa, with you. An aphrodisiac, you say? In the wine? How fascinating. Oh, heavens. Oh, heavens, sighed Yennefer, stretching and throwing a thigh over the Witcher's. Oh, heavens, I haven't made love for so long, for so very long. Geralt disentangled his fingers from her curls without responding. Firstly, her statement might have been a trap. He was afraid there might be a hook hidden in the bait. Secondly, he didn't want to wipe away with words the taste of her delight, which was still on his lips. I haven't made love to a man who declared his love to me and to whom I declared my love for a very long time, she murmured a moment later, when it was clear the Witcher wasn't taking the bait. I forgot how wonderful it can be. Oh, heavens. Oh, heavens. She stretched even more vigorously, reaching out with her arms and seizing the corners of the pillow in both hands, so that her breasts, now flooded in moonlight, took on curves that made themselves felt as a shudder in the Witcher's lower back. He hugged her, and they both lay still, spent, their ardour cooled. Outside their chamber, cicadas chirped, and from far off, quiet voices and laughter could also be heard, testimony that the banquet still wasn't over, in spite of the late hour. Geralt?
Yes, Yen?
Tell me.
About the conversation with Vilgefortz.
Now?
I'll tell you in the morning.
Right now, if you please. He looked at the writing desk in the corner of the chamber. On it were various books and other objects, which the novice who had been temporarily rehoused to accommodate Yennefer in Loxier had been unable to take with her. A plump rag doll in a ruffled dress, lovingly placed to lean up against the books and crumpled from frequent cuddling, was also there.
She didn't take the doll, he thought, to avoid exposing herself to her friend's teasing in a Loxier dormitory. She didn't take her doll with her.
and she probably couldn't fall asleep without it tonight. The doll stared at him with button eyes. He looked away. When Yennefer had introduced him to the chapter, he'd observed the sorcerer's elite intently. Hen Gediumdaith only gave him a tired glance. It was apparent the banquet had already exhausted the old man. Arto Terranova bowed with an ambiguous grimace, shifting his eyes from him to Yennefer, but immediately became serious when he realized others were watching him. The blue, elven eyes of Francesca Finderbauer were as inscrutable and hard as glass. The Daisy of the Valleys smiled when he was introduced to her. That smile, although incredibly beautiful, filled the Witcher with dread. During the introductions, Tissaia de Vries, although apparently preoccupied with her sleeves and jewellery, which seemed to require endless straightening, smiled at him considerably less beautifully, but with considerably more sincerity. And it was Tissaia who immediately struck up a conversation with him, referring to one of his noble Witcher deeds, which he, incidentally, could not recall, and suspected she had invented. And then Vilgefortz joined the conversation. Vilgefortz of Roggeveen, a sorcerer of imposing stature, with noble and beautiful features, and a sincere and honest voice. Geralt knew he could expect anything from people who looked like that. They spoke briefly, sensing plenty of anxious eyes on them. Yennefer looked at the Witcher. A young sorceress with friendly eyes, constantly trying to hide the bottom of her face behind a fan, was looking at Vilgefortz. They exchanged several conventional comments, after which Vilgefortz suggested they continue the conversation in private. It seemed to Geralt that Tissaia de Vries was the only person surprised by this proposition.
"Have you fallen asleep, Geralt?" muttered Yennefer, shaking him out of his musings. "You're meant to be telling me about your conversation."
The doll looked at him from the writing desk with its button gaze. He looked away again. "As soon as we entered the cloister," he began a moment later, "that girl with the strange face—"
"Lydia van Bredevoort, Vilgefort's assistant."
"Yes, that's right, you said. Just a meaningless person. So, when we entered the cloister, that meaningless person stopped, looked at him, and asked him something, telepathically.
It wasn't an indiscretion. Lydia can't use her voice."
I guessed as much, because Vilgefortz didn't answer her using telepathy. He replied,
"Yes, Lydia, that's a good idea," answered Vilgefortz. "Let's take a walk through the Gallery of Glory. You'll have the opportunity to take a look at the history of magic, Geralt of Rivia. I have no doubt you're familiar with it. But now you'll have the chance to become acquainted with its visual history too. If you're a connoisseur of painting, please don't be horrified. Most of them are the work of the enthusiastic students of Aretusa. Lydia, be so good as to lighten the gloom around here a little." Lydia van Bredevoort passed her hand through the air, and it immediately became lighter in the corridor. The first painting showed an ancient sailing craft being hurled around by whirlpools among reefs protruding from the surf. A man in white robes stood on the prow of the ship, his head encircled by a bright halo. "The first landing," guessed the Witcher. "Indeed," Vilgefortz confirmed. "The ship of outcasts. Jan Becker is bending the power to his will. He calms the waves, proving that magic need not be evil or destructive, but may save lives." "Did that event really take place?" "I doubt it," smiled the sorcerer. "It's more likely that during the first journey and landing, Becker and the others were hanging over the side vomiting bile. After the landing, which, by a strange twist of fate, was successful, he was able to overcome the power. Let's go on. Here we see Jan Becker once more, forcing water to gush from the rock in the very spot where the first settlement was established. And here, if you please, Becker, surrounded by settlers, drives away the clouds and holds back a tempest to save the harvest." "And here, what event is shown in this painting?" "The identification of the chosen ones. Becker and Giambattista put the children of the settlers through a magical test as they arrived, in order to reveal sources. The selected children were taken from their parents and brought to Myrthe, the first seat of the mages. Right now, you are looking at a historical moment. As you can see, all the children are terrified, and only that determined brown-haired girl is holding a hand out to Giambattista with a completely trusting smile. She became the famous Agnes of Glanville, the first woman to become an enchantress. The woman behind her is her mother. You can see the sadness in her expression.
And this crowd scene?
The Novigradian Union. Becca, Giambattista, and Monk are concluding a pact with rulers, priests, and druids. A pact of non-aggression, codifying the separation of magic and state. Dreadful kitsch. Let's go on. Here we see Geoffrey Monk setting off up the Pontar, which at that time was still called Evoni Pont ar Gwynellen, the river of alabaster bridges. Monk sailed to Lochmuine to persuade the elves there to adopt a group of source children who were taught by elven sorcerers. It may interest you to know that among those children was a little boy who came to be known as Geralt of Witcher. You met him a moment ago. That little boy is now called Hen Gedjimdaith.
This,
said the Witcher, looking at the sorcerer,
is just calling out for a battle scene. After all, several years after Monk's successful expedition, the forces of Marshal Raupenek of Tretogor carried out a pogrom in Lochmuine and East Hamlet, killing all of the elves regardless of age or sex. And a war began, ending with the massacre at Shereweth.
And your impressive knowledge of history, Vilgefortz smiled once again, will remind you, however, that no sorcerer of any note took part in those wars, for which reason the subject did not inspire any of the novices to paint a work to commemorate it. Let's move on.
Very well. What event is shown in this canvas? Oh, I know. It's Raffard the White, reconciling the feuding kings and putting an end to the 6 Years' War. And here we have Raffard refusing to accept the crown. A beautiful, noble gesture.
Do you think so? Said Vilgefortz, tilting his head.
Well, in any case, it was a gesture with a weight of precedent behind it. Raffard did, however, accept the position of first adviser, so became the de facto ruler, since the king was an imbecile. The Gallery of Glory, muttered the Witcher, walking up to the next painting. And what do we have here?
The historical moment when the first chapter was installed and the law enacted. From the left you see seated Herbert Stamelford, Aurora Henson, Ivo Richert, Agnes of Glanville, Geoffrey Monk, and Radomir of Torcanedd. This, if I am to be honest, also cries out for a battle scene to complete it. For soon after, those who refused to acknowledge the chapter and submit to the law were wiped out in a brutal war. Raffard the White died, among others. But historical treatises remain silent about it, so as not to spoil a beautiful legend.
And here? Yes, a novice probably painted this, and a very young one at that.
Undoubtedly. It's an allegory, after all. I'd call it an allegory of triumphant womanliness. Air, water, earth, and fire, and 4 famous enchantresses, all masters at wielding the forces of those elements. Agnes of Glanville, Aurora Henson, Nina Fioravanti, and Clara Larissa de Winter. Look at the next, and more effective painting. Here you also see Clara Larissa opening the Academy for Girls, here in the building where we now stand. And those are portraits of renowned Aretusa graduates. This shows a long history of triumphant womanhood, and the growing feminization of the profession. Jana of Murivel, Nora Wagner, her sister Augusta, Jada Glevissig, Letitia Charbonneau, Ilona Lozantila, Carla Demesia Crest, Yolenta Suarez, April Venhaver, and the only surviving one, Tissaia de Vries. They continued. The silk of Lydia van Bredevoort's dress whispered softly, and the whisper contained a menacing secret.
And that?
Geralt stopped.
What is this dreadful scene?
The martyrdom of the sorcerer Radmir, flayed alive during the Falka rebellion. In the background burns the town of Myrtha, which Falka had ordered to be consumed by flame.
For which act Falka herself was soon consumed by flame, at the stake.
That is a widely known fact. Temerian and Redanian children still play at Burning Falka and Soyaveen's Eve. Let's go back, so that you may see the other side of the gallery. Ah, I see you have a question.
I'm wondering about the chronology. I know, naturally, how elixirs of youth work, but the simultaneous appearance of living people and long-dead ones in these paintings.
You mean you're astonished that you met Hen Gedjimdaith and Tissaia de Vries at the banquet, but Becca, Agnes of Glanville, Stamelford, or Nina Fioravanti are not with us?
No, I know you're not immortal.
What is death? Interrupted Vilgefortz. To you?
The end.
The end of what?
Existence. It seems to me we've moved from art history to philosophy.
Nature doesn't know the concept of philosophy, Geralt of Rivia. The pathetic, ridiculous attempts which people undertake to try to understand nature are typically termed philosophy. The results of such attempts are also considered philosophy. It's as though a cabbage tried to investigate the causes and effects of its existence, called the result of these reflections an internal and mysterious conflict between head and root, and considered rain an unfathomable causative power. We sorcerers don't waste time puzzling out what nature is. We know what it is, for we are nature ourselves. Do you understand?
I'm trying to. But please, talk more slowly. Don't forget, you're talking to a cabbage.
Have you ever wondered what happened when Becker forced the water to gush from the rock? It's generally put very simply. Becker tamed the power. He forced the element to be obedient. He subdued nature, controlled it. What is your relationship to women, Geralt?
I beg your pardon?
Lydia van Bredevoort turned with a whisper of silk and froze in anticipation. Geralt saw she was holding a wrapped-up painting under one arm. He had no idea where the picture had come from, since Lydia had been empty-handed a moment before. The amulet around his neck vibrated faintly. Vilgefortz smiled. I inquired, he repeated, as to your views concerning the relationship between men and women.
Regarding what respect of that relationship?
Can obedience, in your opinion, be forced upon women? I'm talking about real women, of course, not just the female of the species. Can a real woman be controlled, overcome, made to surrender to your will? And if so, how? Answer me.
The rag doll didn't take her eyes off them. Yennefer looked away.
Did you answer?
Yes, I did.
With her left hand, the enchantress squeezed his elbow, and with her right squeezed his fingers, which were touching her breasts. How?
You surely know.
You've understood, said Vilgefortz a moment later. And you've probably always understood. And thus you will also understand that if the concept of will and submission, of commands and obedience, and of male ruler and servant woman will perish and disappear, then unity will be achieved. A community merging into a single entity will be achieved. All will be as one, and if something like that were to occur, death would lose its meaning. Jan Becker, who was water gushing from the rock, is present there in the banqueting hall. To say that Becker died is like saying that water has died. Look at that painting. Geralt looked.
It's unusually beautiful,
he said after a moment. At once he felt a slight vibration of his witch's medallion. Lydia, smiled Vilgefortz, thanks for your acknowledgement, and I congratulate you on your taste. The landscape depicts the meeting between Cregennan of Lod and Lara Doran eb Sheerdal, the legendary lovers torn apart and destroyed by the time of Contempt. He was a sorcerer, and she was an elf, one of the elite of Aenseaveren, or the Knowing Ones. What might have been the beginning of reconciliation was transformed into tragedy.
I know that story. I always treated it as a fairy tale. What really happened?
That, said the sorcerer, becoming serious, nobody knows. I mean, almost nobody. Lydia, hang up your picture over here. Geralt, have a look at another of Lydia's impressive works. It's a portrait of Lara Doran eb Sheerdal, taken from an ancient miniature.
Congratulations, said the Witcher, bowing to Lydia van Bredevoort, finding it hard to keep his voice from quavering. It's a true masterpiece.
His tone didn't quaver, even though Lara Doran eb Sheerdal looked at him from the portrait with Ciri's eyes. What happened after that?
Lydia remained in the gallery. The two of us went out onto the terrace,
and he enjoyed himself at my expense.
This way, Geralt, if you would. Step only on the dark slabs, please.
The sea roared below, and the Isle of Thanedd stood in the white foam of the breakers. The waves broke against the walls of Loxia directly beneath them. Loxia sparkled with lights, as did Aretuza. The stone block of Garstang, towering above them, was black and lifeless, however.
"Tomorrow,"
said the sorcerer, following the witcher's gaze,
"the members of the chapter and the council will don their traditional robes, the flowing black cloaks and pointed hats known to you from ancient prints. We will also arm ourselves with long wands and staffs, thus resembling the wizards and witches parents frighten children with. That is the tradition. We will go up to Garstang in the company of several other delegates, and there, in a specially prepared chamber, we will debate. The other delegates will await our return and our decisions in Aretuza."
Are the smaller meetings in Garstang behind closed doors also traditional?
"But of course. It's a long tradition, and one which has come about through practical considerations. Gatherings of mages are known to be tempestuous, and have led to very frank exchanges of views. During one of them, ball lightning damaged Nina Fioravanti's coiffure and dress. Nina reinforced the walls of Garstang with an incredibly powerful aura and an anti-magic blockade, which took her a year to prepare. From that day on, no spells have worked in Garstang, and the discussions have proceeded altogether more peacefully, particularly when it is remembered to remove all bladed weapons from the delegates."
"I see. And that solitary tower on the very summit above Garstang, what is it? Some kind of important building?"
"It is Tor Lara, the Tower of Gulls. A ruin. Is it important? It probably is."
"Probably."
The sorcerer leaned on the banisters. "According to Elvish tradition, Tor Lara is connected by a portal to the mysterious, still undiscovered, Tor Zirial, the Tower of Swallows."
"According to tradition? You haven't managed to find the portal? I don't believe you."
"You are right not to. We discovered the portal, but it was necessary to block it. There were protests. Everyone was itching to conduct experiments. Everyone wanted the fame of being the first to discover Tor Zirial, the mythical seat of elven mages and sages. But the portal is irreversibly warped and transports people chaotically. There were casualties, so it was blocked up. Let's go, Geralt. It's getting cold. Carefully. Only walk on the dark slabs."
"Why only the dark ones?"
"These buildings are in ruins. Damp, erosion, strong winds, the salt air. They all have a disastrous effect on the walls. Repairs would cost too much, so we make use of illusion instead of workmen. Prestige, you understand."
"It doesn't apply to everything."
The sorcerer waved a hand, and the terrace vanished. They were standing over a precipice, over an abyss bristling far below with the teeth of rocks jutting from the foam. They were standing on a narrow belt of dark slabs, stretched like a tightrope between the rocky ledge of Aretuza and the pillar holding up the terrace. Geralt had difficulty keeping his balance. Had he been a man and not a witcher, he would have failed. But even he was rattled. His sudden movement could not have escaped the attention of the sorcerer, and his reaction must also have been visible. The wind rocked him on the narrow footbridge, and the abyss called to him with a sinister roaring of the waves. "You're afraid of death," noted Vilgefortz with a smile. "You are afraid, after all."
The ragdoll looked at them with button eyes.
"He tricked you," murmured Yennefer, cuddling up to the Witcher. "There was no danger. He sure to have protected you and himself with a levitational field. He wouldn't have taken the risk." "What happened then?"
"We went to another wing of Aretuza. He led me to a large chamber which was probably the office of one of the teachers, or even the rectoress. We sat by a table with an hourglass on it. The sand was trickling through it. I could smell the fragrance of Lydia's perfume and knew she had been in the chamber before us."
"And Vilgefortz?"
He asked me a question.
"Why didn't you become a sorcerer, Geralt? Weren't you ever attracted by the art?" Be honest.
I will. I was.
Why then didn't you follow the voice of that attraction?
I decided it'd be wiser to follow the voice of good sense.
Meaning?
Years of practice in the witcher's trade have taught me not to bite off more than I can chew.
Do you know, Vilgefortz, I once knew a dwarf
who, as a child, dreamed of being an elf.
What do you think? Would he have become one
had he followed the voice of attraction?
Is that supposed to be a comparison? A parallel? If so, it's utterly ill-judged. A dwarf could not become an elf, not without having an elf for its mother. Geralt remained silent for a long time.
I get it, he finally said. I should have guessed. You've been having a root around in my life history. To what purpose, if you don't mind?
Perhaps, smiled the sorcerer faintly, I'm dreaming of a painting in the Gallery of Glory. The two of us, seated at a table, and on a brass plaque the title, Vilgefortz of Roggeveen, entering into a pact with Geralt of Rivia.
That would be an allegory, said the Witcher, with the title, Knowledge Triumphing over Ignorance. I'd prefer a more realistic painting entitled, In which Vilgefortz explains to Geralt what this is all about.
Vilgefortz brought the tips of his fingers together in front of his mouth. Isn't it obvious?
No.
Have you forgotten? The painting I'm dreaming about hangs in the Gallery of Glory, where future generations, who know perfectly well what it's all about, what event is depicted in the picture, can look at it. On the canvas, Vilgefortz and Geralt are negotiating and concluding an agreement, as a result of which Geralt, following the voice, not of some kind of attraction or predilection, but a genuine vocation, finally joined the ranks of mages. This brings to an end his erstwhile and not particularly sensible existence, which has no future whatsoever.
Just think, said the Witcher after a lengthy silence, that not so long ago I believed that nothing more could astonish me. Believe me, Vilgefortz, I'll remember this banquet and this pageant of incredible events for a long time, worthy of a painting indeed. The title would be, Geralt leaving the Isle of Thanedd shaking with laughter.
I don't understand, said the sorcerer, leaning forward a little. You lost me with the floweriness of your discourse, so liberally sprinkled with sophisticated words.
The causes of the misunderstanding are clear to me. We differ too much to understand each other. You are a mighty sorcerer from the chapter who has achieved oneness with nature. I'm a wanderer, a witcher, a mutant, who travels the world and slays monsters for money.
That floweriness, interrupted the sorcerer, has been supplanted by banality.
We differ too greatly, said Geralt, not allowing himself to be interrupted, and the minor fact that my mother was, by accident, a sorceress, is unable to erase that difference. But, just out of curiosity, who was your mother?
I have no idea, said Vilgefortz calmly. The Witcher immediately fell silent. Druids from the Covia Circle, said the sorcerer a moment later, found me in a gutter in Lanexeter. They took me in and raised me, to be a druid, of course. Do you know what a druid is? It's a kind of mutant, a wanderer, who travels the world and bows to sacred oaks. The Witcher said nothing. And later, continued Vilgefortz, my gifts revealed themselves during certain druidical rituals. Gifts which clearly and undeniably pointed to my origins. I was begat by two people, evidently unplanned, and at least one of them was a sorcerer. Geralt said nothing. The person who discovered my modest abilities was, of course, a sorcerer whom I met by accident, continued Vilgefortz calmly. He offered me a tremendous gift, the chance of an education and of self-improvement, with a view to joining the Brotherhood of Sorcerers.
And you, said the Witcher softly, accepted the offer?
No, said Vilgefortz, his voice becoming increasingly cold and unpleasant. I rejected it, in a rude, even boorish way.
I unloaded all my anger on the old fool. I wanted him to feel guilty, he and his entire magical fraternity. Guilty, naturally, for the gutter in Lanexeter. Guilty that one or two detestable conjurers, bastards without hearts or human feelings, had thrown me into that gutter at birth, and not before, when I wouldn't have survived. The sorcerer, it goes without saying, didn't understand, wasn't concerned by what I told him. He shrugged and went on his way, by doing so branding himself and his fellows with the stigma of insensitive, arrogant whoresons, worthy of the greatest contempt. Geralt said nothing. I'd had a gut full of druids, said Vilgefortz. So, I gave up my sacred oak groves and set off into the world. I did a variety of things. I'm still ashamed of some of them. I finally became a mercenary. My life after that unfolded, as you might imagine, predictably. Victorious soldier, defeated soldier, marauder, robber, rapist, murderer, and finally a fugitive fleeing the noose. I fled to the ends of the world, and there, at the end of the world, I met a woman. A sorceress.
Be careful, whispered the Witcher, and his eyes narrowed. Be careful, Vilgefortz, that the similarities you're desperately searching for don't lead you too far.
The similarities are over, said the sorcerer, without lowering his gaze, since I couldn't cope with the feelings I felt for that woman. I couldn't understand her feelings, and she didn't try to help me with them. I left her, because she was promiscuous, arrogant, spiteful, unfeeling and cold, because it was impossible to dominate her, and her domination of me was humiliating. I left her because I knew she was only interested in me because my intelligence, personality and fascinating mystery obscured the fact that I wasn't a sorcerer, and it was usually only sorcerers she would honour with more than one night. I left her because she was like my mother. I suddenly understood that what I felt for her was not love at all, but a feeling which was considerably more complicated, more powerful, but more difficult to classify. A mixture of fear, regret, fury, pangs of conscience, and the need for expiation. A sense of guilt, loss, and hurt. A perverse need for suffering and atonement. What I felt for that woman was hate. Geralt remained silent. Vilgefortz was looking to one side. I left her, he said after a while, and then I couldn't live with the emptiness which engulfed me. And I suddenly understood it wasn't the absence of a woman that causes that emptiness, but the lack of everything I had been feeling. It's a paradox, isn't it? I imagine I don't need to finish. You can guess what happened next. I became a sorcerer, out of hatred, and only then did I understand how stupid I was. I mistook stars reflected in a pond at night for those in the sky.
As you rightly observed, the parallels between us aren't completely parallel, murmured Geralt. In spite of appearances, we have little in common, Vilgefortz. What did you want to prove by telling me your story? That the road to wizardly excellence, although winding and difficult, is available to anyone. Even, excuse my parallel, to bastards or foundlings, wanderers or witches.
No, the sorcerer interrupted. I didn't mean to prove this road is open to all, because that's obvious and was proved long ago. Neither was there a need to prove that certain people simply have no other path.
And so, smiled the Witcher, I have no choice. I have to enter into a pact with you, a pact which should someday become the subject of a painting and become a sorcerer, on account of genetics alone. Give me a break. I know a little about the theory of heredity. My father, as I discovered with no little difficulty, was a wanderer, a churl, a troublemaker and a swashbuckler. My genes on the spear side may be dominant over the genes on the distaff side. The fact that I can swash a buckler pretty well seems to confirm that.
Indeed. The sorcerer derisively smiled. The hourglass has almost run its course, and I, Vilgefortz of Roggeveen, master of magic, member of the chapter, am still discoursing, not unpleasantly, with a churl and swashbuckler, the son of a churl,
a swashbuckler and a wanderer. We are talking of matters which, as everyone knows, are typical fireside debate subjects, beloved of churlish swashbucklers. Subjects like genetics, for example. How do you even know that word, my swashbuckling friend? From the temple school in Ellender, where they teach the pupils to read and write just 24 runes? Whatever induced you to read books in which words like that and other similar ones can be found? Where did you perfect your rhetoric and eloquence? And why did you do it? To converse with vampires? Oh, my genetic wanderer, upon whom Tessire de Vries deigned to smile. Oh, my witcher, my swashbuckler, who fascinates Philippa Eilhart so much her hands tremble, at the recollection of whom Tris Merigold blushes crimson, not to mention the effect you have on Yennefer of Vengerberg. Perhaps it's as well, you uncle, to mention her. Indeed, so little sand remains in the hourglass, I can almost count the grains. Don't paint any more pictures, Vilgefortz. Tell me what this is all about. Tell me, using simple words. Imagine we're sitting by the fire, two wanderers, roasting a piglet which we just stole, trying and failing to get drunk on birch juice. Just a simple question. Answer it as one wanderer to another. What is the simple question? What kind of pact are you proposing? What agreement are we to conclude? Why do you want me in your pot? In this cauldron, which it seems to me is starting to boil? What else is hanging in the air here, apart from candelabra? The sorcerer pondered, or pretended to. The question is not simple, but I'll try to answer it. But not as a wanderer to a wanderer. I'll answer as one hired swashbuckler to another. Similar swashbuckler.
Suits me.
Then listen, comrade swashbuckler. Quite a nasty scrap is brewing. A bloody fight for life or death with no mercy shown. One side will triumph, and the other will be pecked apart by ravens. I put it to you, comrade. Join the side with the better chance. Join us. Forget the others. Spit on them with utter contempt, because they don't stand a chance. What's the point of perishing with them? No, comrade. Don't scowl at me. I know what you want to say. You want to say you're neutral. That you don't give a shit about any of them. That you'll simply sit out the slaughter, hunkered down in Kaer Morhen, hidden in the mountains. That's a bad idea, comrade. Everything you love will be with us. If you don't join us, you'll lose everything, and then you'll be consumed by emptiness, nothingness, and hatred. You'll be destroyed by the approaching time of contempt, so be sensible and join the right side when the time comes to choose. And it will come. Trust me.
It's incredible.
The Witcher smiled hideously. How much my neutrality outrages everybody. How it makes me subject to offers of pacts and agreements, offers of collaboration, lectures about the necessity to make choices and join the right side. Let's put an end to this conversation, Vilgefortz. You're wasting your time. I'm not an equal partner for you in this game. I can't see any chance of the two of us ending up in a painting in the Gallery of Glory, particularly not in a battle scene. The sorcerer said nothing. Set out on your chessboard, said Geralt. The kings, queens, elephants and rooks, and don't worry about me, because I mean as much on your chessboard as the dust on it. It's not my game. You say I'll have to choose. I say you're wrong. I won't choose. I'll respond to events. I'll adapt to what others choose. That's what I've always done. You're a fatalist. That's right, although that's yet another word I ought not to know. I repeat, it's not my game. Really? Said Vilgefortz, leaning across the table. In this game, Witcher, on the chessboard, stands a black horse. It's tied to you by bonds of destiny, for good or ill. You know who I'm talking about, don't you? And I'm sure you don't want to lose her, do you? Just know, there's only one way not to lose her. The Witcher's eyes narrowed. What do you want from that child? There's only one way for you to find out. I'm warning you.
I won't let anyone harm her.
There's only one way you could prevent that. I offered you that option, Geralt of Rivia. Think over my offer. You have the entire night. Think as you look up at the sky, at the stars, and don't mistake them with their reflection in a pond. The sand has run out.
I'm afraid for Ciri, Yen.
There's no need. But trust me, she said, hugging him. Trust me, please. Don't worry about Vilgefortz. He's a wily old fox. He wanted to trick you, to provoke you, and he was partly successful. But it's not important. Ciri is in my care, and she'll be safe in Aretuza. She'll be able to develop her abilities there, and no one will interfere with that. No one. But forget about her becoming a witcher. She has other talents, and she's destined for other work. You can trust me.
I trust you.
That's significant progress. And don't worry about Vilgefortz. Tomorrow will explain many matters and solve many problems.
Tomorrow, he thought. She's hiding something from me, and I'm afraid to ask what. Cordringer was right. I've got mixed up in a dreadful mess, but now there's no way out. I have to wait and see what tomorrow, which is supposed to explain everything, will bring. I have to trust her. I know something's going to happen. I'll wait and adapt to the situation.
He looked at the writing desk.
Yen,
I'm here.
When you were a pupil at Aretuza, when you slept in a chamber like this, did you have a doll you couldn't sleep without, which you put on the writing desk during the day?
No, said Yennefer, moving suddenly. I didn't have a doll of any kind. Don't ask me about that, Geralt. Please, don't ask me.
Aretuza, he whispered, looking around. Aretuza on the Isle of Thaneth. It'll become her home for so many years. When she leaves here, she'll be a mature woman.
Stop that. Don't think about it and don't talk about it. Instead—
What, Yen?
Love me. He embraced her and touched her and found her. Yennefer, in some astonishing way, hard and soft at the same time, sighed loudly. The words they had uttered broke off, perished among the sighs and quickened breaths, ceased to have any meaning and were dissipated. So they remained silent and focused on the search for one another, on the search for the truth. They searched for a long time, lovingly and very thoroughly, fearful of needless haste, recklessness, and nonchalance. They searched vigorously, intensively, and passionately, fearful of needless self-doubt and indecision. They searched cautiously, fearful of needless tactlessness. They found one another, conquered their fear, and a moment later found the truth, which exploded under their eyelids with a terrible, blinding clarity, tore apart the lips, pursed in determination with a moan. Then time shuddered spasmodically and froze. Everything vanished, and touch became the only functioning sense. An eternity passed. Reality returned, and time shuddered once more and set off again, slowly, ponderously, like a great, fully laden cart. Geralt looked through the window. The moon was still hanging in the sky, although what had just happened ought in principle to have struck it down from the sky. "Oh, heavens! Oh, heavens!" said Yennefer much later, slowly wiping a tear from her cheek. They lay still among the dishevelled sheets, among thrills, among steaming warmth and waning happiness, and among silence, and all around whirled vague darkness, permeated by the scent of the night and the voices of cicadas. Geralt knew that in moments like this, the enchantress's telepathic abilities were sharpened and very powerful, so he thought about beautiful matters and beautiful things, about things which would give her joy, about the exploding brightness of the sunrise, about fog suspended over a mountain lake at dawn, about crystal waterfalls with salmon leaping up them, gleaming as though made of solid silver, about warm drops of rain hitting burdock leaves heavy with dew. He thought for her,
and Yennefer smiled, listening to his thoughts. The smile quivered on her cheek, along with the crescent shadows of her eyelashes.
"A home?" asked Yennefer suddenly. "What home? Do you have a home? You want to build a home? Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't—"
He was quiet. He was angry with himself. As he had been thinking for her, he had accidentally allowed her to read a thought about herself.
"A pretty dream,"
said Yennefer, stroking him lightly on the shoulder.
"A home. A house built with your own hands, and you and I in that house. You would keep horses and sheep, and I would have a little garden, cook food and card wool, which we would take to market. With the pennies earned from selling the wool and various crops, we would buy what we needed. Let's say some copper cauldrons and an iron rake. Every now and then, Ciri would visit us with her husband and 3 children, and Tris Merigold would occasionally look in to stay for a few days. We'd grow old together, beautifully and with dignity, and should I ever get bored, you would play for me in the evening on your homemade bagpipes. Playing the bagpipes, as everyone knows, is the best remedy for depression."
The Witcher said nothing. The enchantress cleared her throat softly.
"I'm sorry,"
she said a moment later. He got up on an elbow, leaned across and kissed her. She moved suddenly and hugged him, wordlessly.
"Say something."
"I wouldn't like to lose you, Yen."
"But you have me."
"The night will end."
"Everything ends."
"No," he thought. "I don't want it to be like that. I'm tired. Too tired to accept the perspective of endings which are beginnings and starting everything over again. I'd like—"
"Don't talk,"
she said, quickly placing her fingers on his lips.
"Don't tell me what you'd like and what you desire. Because it might turn out I won't be able to fulfill your desires, and that causes me pain."
"What do you desire, Yen? What do you dream about?"
"Only about achievable things."
"And about me?"
"I already have you."
He remained quiet for a long time, waiting until she broke the silence.
"Geralt."
"Hmm?"
"Love me, please."
At first, satiated with each other, they were both full of fantasy and invention, creative, imaginative, and craving for the new. As usual, it quickly turned out it was at once too much and too little. They understood it simultaneously, and once more made love to one another. When Geralt had recovered his senses, the moon was still in its place. The cicadas were playing wildly, as though they also wanted to conquer anxiety and fear with madness and abandon. From a nearby window in the left wing of Aretusa, someone craving sleep yelled out, fulminating sternly and demanding quiet. From a window on the other side, someone else, clearly with a more artistic soul, applauded enthusiastically and congratulated them. "Oh, Yen," whispered the Witcher reproachfully.
"I had a reason."
She kissed him and then buried her cheek in the pillow.
"I had a reason to scream. So I screamed. It shouldn't be suppressed. It would be unhealthy and unnatural. Hold me, please."
The Lara portal, also known as Benevent's portal after its discoverer, located on the Isle of Thanev, on the uppermost floor of the Tower of Gulls. A fixed portal, periodically active. Principles of functioning, unknown. Destination, unknown, but probably skewed owing to damage. Numerous forks or dispersions possible. Important information. A chaotic and lethally dangerous portal. All experimentation categorically forbidden. Magic may not be used in the Tower of Gulls or in close proximity to it, particularly not teleportational magic. In exceptional cases, the chapter will examine applications for permission to enter Tor Lara and for inspections of the portal. Applications should be supported by evidence of research work already in progress and of specialization in the subject area. Bibliography: Geoffrey Monk, The Magic of the Elder Folk. Emmanuel Benevent, The Portal of Tor Lara. Nina Fioravanti, The Theory and Practice of Teleportation. Ransont Alvaro, The Gates of Mystery. Prohibita, List of banned artifacts. Ars Magica, edition 58.